Hello, everyone. Welcome back to St. Louis Teens. I'm here today with Phani Vemuri, who is the CIO at Kaplan International. Phani, how are you?
I'm good, man. Nice to meet you, Surya.
Nice to meet you too. So I know you're currently in Singapore. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And I know Singapore is sort of talked about as one of the three countries, along with Taiwan and Hong Kong, in containing the coronavirus in a very effective way. Would you say this is true based on how people there are reacting and how the situation is there?
Yeah, definitely. Right. I think we had some early success. Singapore had really good early success in terms of containing the virus, but we're not definitely out of the woods, right?
Yeah.
What we are seeing is a second wave of cases that are coming up. The most number of cases that we had was just the day before yesterday. We had 40 plus cases, but majority of them are imported cases. So what that
Okay.
means is there is no community transmission. It's mostly happening through uh, through Singapore residents coming back from abroad,
All right.
right? But we're not taking it. Singapore is not taking it lightly. So there is still a lot of restrictions in place.
So for you as a resident in Singapore, how has your life changed from before?
Yeah, so I talked about the restrictions that are in place for the people who are coming in, but also for the residents of Singapore. Now, what Singapore has been doing is to test rigorously and to do contact tracing and to do social distancing. And these measures do affect me personally as well as a resident. For example, I'm working from home for the last few weeks or so, and this is meant to help with the social distancing measures and stop the spread of virus, right? So that's one thing. There are a few other restrictions that are in place. Say, for example, if you feel sick, even without any symptoms, you're supposed to stay away from work for at least 5 days. If you have been in contact with anybody who was uh, who's positive with coronavirus, then you have to isolate yourself at home for 14 days. And if you have traveled to a country where there's high risk, or if you're coming from a country where there's a high spread, then you are supposed to quarantine yourself as well. I personally had to postpone my trip to Spain. I think
Wow.
in the end it turned out to be a good decision, especially
Yeah.
with the number of cases that are going on in Spain.
Yeah.
But I don't know when I can make the trip, or I don't think it'll happen beyond. Maybe it'll be beyond summer.
Yeah. So you sort of talked about the various restrictions in place for citizens. Are there any restrictions on in terms of travel, people coming in or out um, of Singapore?
Yeah, it's an evolving situation. So the current advice from the government is to defer all travel. Don't travel.
Okay.
Right. If you are from Singapore, don't leave Singapore.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're asking Singaporeans to come back who are abroad to come back into Singapore.
Really?
Uh,
Okay.
yes. So and when you come back, you're supposed to quarantine yourself for 14 days. Stay at home.
Right.
Right. So that's compulsory. There are no exclusions. Severe restrictions. I think the travel industry is suffering a lot. As you know, Singapore is a hub for tourist tourism,
Yeah.
right, into Asia. So that's struggling, but it's the right measure to take to protect the citizens, I think.
Yeah. So what would you say the overall state of the public is given everything that's transpired? Is there any sort of mass panic, or are people just sort of self quarantining themselves and maintaining social distancing?
Yeah, I think the people are taking this in their stride, right? So there were some cases of panic when the initial threat level was raised to
Okay.
orange. People went out and did some panic buying. I mean,
Yeah.
for toilet papers, I think that's the same case
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
US. But that's gone away. Now, most recently, the land border with Malaysia is closed. This is similar to the border between US and Canada.
Okay.
So that's closed for for citizens of both Malaysia and Singapore. So there has been a bit of panic around the goods, because most of the goods, around 30% of the goods that Singapore gets is through Malaysia,
Right.
Through that road link.
Yeah.
So there's been a little bit of panic, but the government is helping the citizens to understand the situation, and there's constant regular communication as well.
So, talking about, the goods situation, what are the different measures that Singapore is imposing or recommending on stores that, are selling goods, or like schools and other small businesses where people may be getting together?
Yeah, so the schools remain open
Really?
in Singapore, yeah, and it is meant as a measure to help the public services workers, right? So
Okay.
the idea behind this is that we need the schools to open so that it frees the parents to do the public service work,
Okay.
right? Those who are working in the healthcare, or who are running the public transport, or who are doing the utilities, right? So they need their kids to be in the schools.
Yeah.
But to ensure that the schools are safe, the government has imposed strict rules in what happens at the schools. So there are no public events, no mass gatherings that are happening in the schools. Every student has to take their temperature twice a day
Wow.
to see if they're feeling well, and if they're not feeling well, they have to immediately go back home and stay at home. And similarly, from the goods perspective and for the stores, they remain open, but some stores have put limitations on how much you can actually buy.
Okay.
So there's a dollar limit on certain goods, and there is a quantity limit on others. For example, the toilet paper, you can only buy 2 packs of rolls.
Right.
I think that's quite enough for many people.
So, have there been any sort of small businesses or restaurants that have been closing?
The restaurants remain open.
Okay.
Small businesses still remain open, but you can see the impact of the social distancing measures.
Yeah.
You don't see them as full, as busy as before. Now there's a plan, or there's actually a budget allocation that was made to support those small business enterprises.
Okay.
The government is considering a second round of measures to help the businesses, and the key focus of the business has been to stop retrenchments in the general businesses, right? So they have been supporting payroll as well for some of the businesses which are impacted by this virus situation.
And how long is the Singapore media and government anticipating, this all will take in order to clear?
I think for the long term, some people were saying that it's going to take up to 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
The government expects the cases to come in waves, right? Because
Right.
as the virus spreads to different parts of the world, there is still a high risk of imported cases coming into Singapore.
Yeah.
So these measures still remain. Are you affected as well? Are your schools still open, or are you closed?
So our school has been closed we actually have spring break this week, so we have an additional 2 weeks that are off. And many schools around the nation have closed, at least temporarily, and some schools, I think in California and Illinois, have actually closed for the rest of the semester.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in UK, the schools are closed,
Okay.
but in addition to that, the exams are also postponed.
Okay.
Right? So there are actually no exams this year.
Really?
So the GCSEs and the A levels are cancelled.
Okay.
So they're going to find a different mechanism to evaluate the students, to assess the students. Fortunately, that is not the case yet in Singapore.
Yeah.
The students still, it is a spring break this week in Singapore as well.
Okay.
But the government has said that the schools will open on Monday.
Okay.
But hopefully with the strong social distancing measures and the testing capability and the contact tracing that's happening,
Right.
we keep the schools safe.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for answering all of our questions as well.
Thanks, Surya. All
All
the
right.
best.